Right, so for this week's match blog, I'm going to be running you through the Guru Spring Festival at the lovely Maver Weston Pools Fishery. This festival I was really looking forward to, great to get away with all the lads. It's been a long time since we've been able to, sit outside the clubhouse and have a pint at night, so really enjoyable festival. I was really looking forward to it. I'm just going to run you through both the days and what went on and a few different little edges that I found out through the week. So the first day I drew an absolute screamer of a peg, to be fair, 42 on the canal. People who know Weston Pools Fishery will know that this is the famous bridge peg as you drive into Weston Pools, and it's a peg that I've fished quite a few times on features and drew it a couple of times in matches, and it's normally absolutely solid with fish underneath the bridge. So that was going to be my main target of the day. So one thing I want to talk about this week is it was very, very cold at night. We were having frost every morning when we woke up. There was a frost, you were having to scrape the van, and then during the day it warmed right up to be 15 or 16 degrees and it was red hot. So what's been happening is all the fish are swimming around on the surface in little pockets of fish, and they're not really wanting to come into any bait. So obviously when I got to my peg on the first day, I seen there was quite a lot of fish just ganged up underneath the bridge, so mugging was going to play a big part in my match. I was hoping to catch some also feeding shallow, so I was going to feed a few maggots under the bridge, and I was also going to have a short line and an edge line for fishing with pellets, either soft pellets or possibly hard pellets if there was a few better fish to feed on the day. So to start with, I decided to have a quick look short on pellets at the start of the match. Caught really well, to be honest, to start with. Like everyone did, to be fair. I was looking around the lake and I thought it was going to fish really well. Everyone went in on pellets, caught an odd fish to start with. Nice F1s, just feeding micros and fishing a formal expander on the hook. And now, this probably what I actually, because I caught so well early, I probably made a bit of a mistake, and I actually fed quite a bit too much bait, I think, towards the bridge, and I fed to try and catch in the feed and to catch shallow. And as it turned out, I've caught next to nothing shallow today. On that day, I fished middle of the bridge, loose feeding maggots, and I've just caught literally a handful of eyed and 2 or 3 tiny little F1s. And now looking back, I probably actually spoilt that area in my peg. I maybe should have fished a bit more conservative, fed a little bit less bait and fished on the bottom there, and then just every now and again when a fish swam from out of the bridge, picked my mugging rig up and mugged that. I don't think there was enough fish feeding to actually come into my peg and feed properly shallow, so that was a bit of a mistake. So middle of the match I didn't catch a great deal, to be honest. I tried to make my shallow line work, it was going nowhere really, but I wasn't really seeing anyone really catch, so I thought I was doing alright. Late on I've decided to spend most of my time fishing in my right hand edge. There's a nice point there and it's nice and shallow, so fishing there with micros and expanders, and I've had a good run of fish at the end. Caught a few carp late on. It wasn't solid, but I did manage to sort of pull something a bit back late on in the day, and I ended up with 71 pound, which put me third in the section. Tony Wilson on peg 12 actually beat me by 2 pound. He had 73 pounds, so a bit frustrated with myself. I know I could have had that. And then Ben Hagg on peg 16 actually won this section with 119 pound, which looking back I don't know if I could have caught that weight. That's a real good weight on the day, that. And I think speaking to him, he's caught a lot of fish fishing pellets on the bottom and fishing maggots on the bottom, so by the sounds he made the right decision, just taking it steady, fishing on the bottom. There weren't a great deal of muggers in his peg by the sounds, so he's done the right thing. I should have done that. A lot of anglers have caught mugging on the lake, but there weren't a great deal for me to mug. I couldn't really see him on the bank that I was sat on, and I made the mistake of thinking I would catch shallow and it just weren't right for it. So big mistake, and something I've learned for next time. Take it steady and go from there. Don't go for it from the off. So on the second day I've drew a bit of a weird peg actually, peg 17 on Belv, and now Belv's been redesigned a bit this year. They've moved some of the ropes around, some of the aerators, took some of the pots out, so some of the pegs are a bit different. So peg 17 in the past isn't a peg that's been in a lot, but it was a peg that I half fancied. It was an end peg. I hadn't caught a lot of the first day, but I still felt like I could get a decent result from there. The only problem with this is peg 13 on Belve, had won the match the day before with a real good weight dobbing fish, £135 by Dan Hill, and I thought that the lad who drew that peg was going to be hard to beat, and as it turns out it was one of my good mates, Andy Kane, and so I knew he was going to catch a few there and be very difficult to beat. But not only that, I also had one of my best mates, Key Marsden, opposite me, and he was on peg 9, and Matty Dawes had been on it the day before, and he'd had a really good weight on peg 9 as well, £125. So I knew I had, my work cut out if I was going to beat them lads, and that's exactly how it's turned out, to be honest. I've had a bit of a slow start really to the match. Caught a few silvers and a few carp, just fishing maggots short. Pellets hadn't really been working on this lake. From speaking to the lads who I'd spoke to, they all said it was all maggots, so I decided to actually start on maggots. And I started short on maggots, and I caught a few fish, few silvers, one carp, and it weren't great. And I could see Andy on the end peg was catching really well mugging, but there just wasn't anything in front of us. And Kieran opposite me and Aaron Williams, we were all sat there watching Andy thinking, what are we going to do? He's just going to run away with it. And that's sort of what's happened for the first 2 hours of the match. But then I think a few fish have decided to venture up from the corner, and a few fish have started to push towards the middle of the lake. And then there was an odd fish in front of us, so I've dobbed a few fishing long towards the pallet down the edge, just on 2 maggots on a little dibber float, a Richie Wilson dibber float with a long lash, a bit like the shallow rig I talked about in my last vlog that I did, where I was talking about fishing shallow at Partridge Lakes, but this was just with quite a long length of line, around 3 foot between float and pole. And all it meant is I could just flick at fish. It doesn't make a massive noise, it's only a very light float, and it doesn't spook the fish, and I can just mug an odd F1. It's quite an unusual thing to actually see balls of F1 swimming around and be able to mug them. It's quite a sort of interesting. I've never really seen it here before, but I just think the massive contrast between the temperature during the night and the temperature in the day has caused this. So on this day with the mugging, I was mugging an odd fish. I was just stood up on my box and being quite patient, waiting for a fish to come past. But the problem what I did have was very similar to the problem I had the day before. It was actually silver water in front of me, and I couldn't really see the fish. Even though there was a few fish there, I couldn't actually see the individual fish to be able to flick to him. So it's caused me a few issues. There was not much else I could have really done. I just had to try and put up with flicking about and maybe catching an odd fish, because there weren't a lot feeding early in the match. And all I've been doing through the days, I've been throwing a few maggots short and putting a bit of ground bait down the edge to hopefully catch a good run late on somewhere feeding. And it's not really happened for me until sort of 40 minutes to go, where my short maggot line's been good, and I've had a good run catching 5 or 6 big carp and a few sort of barbel and F1s and a few more hide and chub and bits and bobs, and I've probably had a real good last sort of 40 minutes catching 35-40 pound. And this has put me on £92, which has been 3rd in the section, as I thought, getting beat by Kieran, who's had £106, and Andy, who's took the match out with £171. So massive well done to Andy, fished an awesome match. He also managed to win the festival with a perfect 2-point score. Absolutely buzzing for Andy. What a top fella he is. He's been coming on all the festivals with us over the last few years. Buzzing to see him win. So well done, Andy. So overall in the festival I ended up 10th, and they did pay 12, so I did manage to sneak in the overall money, so quite happy with that. I do think I could have done a bit better off the pegs that I drew though. Definitely on 42 canal, should have come second in section. I should have been a bit more patient, shouldn't have fed so aggressively, and I should have just fished for bites. That was a big mistake by me. I got a bit giddy when I seen the sun, but we have had some cold nights, so you need to make sure that if you're going out, you don't rush into decisions and feed a lot of bait because you see the sun. The water is still cold, so that's something I definitely did wrong over these couple of days. Also on the second day, there was a lot of muggers swimming around and I was struggling to see them. I should have bought a pair of good sunglasses with me, and that would have helped me to spot some fish. And you never know, I only needed £14 that day as well. If I'd have took some sunglasses, I might have been able to mug a few bonus fish that would have been able to push me up to second again. So, looking back, there is definitely a few things that I've learned from this festival that hopefully I can take on to the May festival here, the Weight Master, which is in next month in May. But I really enjoyed the festival. It was a great festival. I always enjoy it here at Weston, and I can't wait for next time we come. So I'm back out on another festival this week. I'm at Partridge Lakes for the 3-day festival at the end of the week. So I'll be catching you up on that shortly, and if you're out this week, have a great time and catch plenty of fish.